We asked therapists, what is something people are so afraid to tell you because they think it's embarrassing? But the joke's on them because we've heard it a million times. Story 1. Intrusive thoughts. Nearly everyone's thought about pushing the old lady onto the subway train, swerving into opposing traffic, or stabbing their loved one in the stomach while cooking dinner with them. Some folks, however, take thoughts very serious that believe they might act them out. It's called thought-action fusion. Most of us are able to brush them off, though. Story 2. The amount of people I see who feel like they should be grieving a certain way and are afraid that they must not have loved someone, or must not have cared enough. People grieve in all sorts of ways. The 5 stages of grief are absolute bullcrap. I was consulting with another who was seeing a couple whose daughter had died. The wife was convinced that the husband must not have cared about her because, quote, he wasn't grieving out loud. In reality, while she had been going to support groups and outwardly expressing, he'd been continuing to work in a garden that him and his daughter had kept when she was alive. Using that time to process and grieve as he did, both were perfectly fine ways of grieving. However, it's expected that one's grief is more than the other. They both ended up working it out, however, and he's driving her and others to their weekly support group. Her attempting to work in the garden with him on the condition that they didn't talk, it's really sweet. To that same extent, the amount of people who are unaware of their own emotions and emotional process is just astounding. So many people feel only angry or happy and worry something must be wrong with them otherwise. Normalizing feelings the whole is just as important. Recognizing what we're feeling as well as what it feels like in our body when we're feeling is incredibly helpful for understanding how we process and feel. As a whole, how we treat emotions as a society is kind of ducked up. Story 3. 2 topics come to my mind with regularity when someone discloses to me that they were sexually abused as a kid, and or when someone's experiencing hurting yourself ideations. Both are something I hear from clients every single day, and so I don't find it weird at all. But when I have someone in front of me who's talking about it for the first time, I know it's important to validate the fact that even though I might be talking about this for like the 5th time that day, they've never talked about this ever, and are in need of a gentle care to feel safe. Story 4. That they don't know what they enjoy doing. Often they have people in their life, including therapists, say, try something fun today, or what do you like to do when you have free time? Many people I work with don't know what those are. Once I explained that I dislike these statements and questions because they assume people should know the answer, and that many people simply don't. I can watch as they relax, take a deep breath, and say something to the effect of, oh my, that's so good to hear. I have no idea what I like to do. That's part of the problem. More often than not, they feel like they should now know that everyone else their age has it figured out. They're embarrassed to say that they don't know when, in fact, not knowing is very common. I couldn't even try to count how many clients I've had this conversation with. Story 5. Unwanted intrusive thoughts are normal and don't mean you're a bad person. Yes, even intrusions of sexual, religion, moral themes. By definition, these are thoughts that are unwanted because they go against your own values and highlight what you don't want to do. Example, a religious person having unwanted blasphemous images pop into their mind, or a new parent having unwanted sexual thoughts about their new baby. However normal these thoughts are, over 90% of the population, the moral nature of these thoughts mean that often people experience a lot of shame to take many years before they first tell anyone about them. Story number 6. It's really common for people with OCD to experience postpartum in the form of continual intrusive thoughts of harming the baby. I'm so glad somebody told me this. I knew that if I had no desire to do these things, I was not a danger to the baby. I told nobody. I must have visualized that baby getting hurt 30,000 times of different causes for months. It was so depressing. The baby is 6 years old now, very bright and talented, and attractive and funny, and did not choke to death or fall or get crushed or dropped or smothered or burned or whatever else. I'm so glad I wasn't misperceiving that as how I wanted to hurt my baby. I would have jumped off a bridge. Story 7. Psychologist here, basically anything to have to do with sex. There's so much shame, sexual abuse, sexual fantasy, fetishes, erectile dysfunction, infidelity, becoming sexually assertive. I have been told that I have a good psychologist face. I try not to have a strong reaction to normalize the discussion. With adolescents, they're extremely anxious to tell me if they've relapsed or aren't doing well. They cut one night or they want to hurt themselves. They're having a lot of negative self-talk or panic attacks. They'll come in pretending everything's hunky-dory. It only lasts about 15 minutes and then they'll say something. They'll reveal that they're worried and they let me down. Then I'd be disappointed in them. It usually turns into a discussion about policies, other people's feelings, and tolerating emotions. I explain that I care about their well-being and it's my job to monitor my emotions and reactions. It's not their role. Story 8. That they don't like their family members, or they're angry and want to stop communication with their parents, etc. I work in a country which is more culturally collectivist, so not wanting anything to do with your parents makes you a jerk in the current cultural sense. We deal with almost it on a daily basis. There's a deep and profound shame in this, and when we find that line of, oh, it might be that your parents are toxic to your mental well-being, and they trigger your trauma. Many of my clients actually get visibly angry with me. Cultural psychology is so important because when I first moved here, I had my American European hat on. Oh boy, did I need to adjust. Story 9. Clients became quite fearful of admitting that they weren't successful since the last time they had a session. This could be including not succeeding and using coping skills that they're learning, or not being able to complete a homework assignment that I gave them. Humans aren't robots, and therapy is a lot of work. That being said, I don't expect people to be perfect as they start to work on themselves in a positive way. It takes time to really commit to change, especially in relation to trauma or conflicting views that an individual holds. I feel as if the client doesn't want to let me down as their therapist, but these failure events are just as important to talk about as successful moments. Story 10. Oh man, I had a therapist when I was 17 or 18, and she would always ask me if I've done my homework. Like school homework. And I never did, so she would always get downright huffy and talk about how I'm being lazy and just need to pull myself together and do it because nobody was going to want to hire me. And I wasn't going to get into college if I did not do my homework and do it well. Which, fair enough, but I was already getting enough of that from my teachers, and this just made me dread therapy to the point where I ended up dropping off the map and stopped going to therapy for a year or two. I tried to start conversations where I explained how the fundamental issue was not feeling safe at home, and that slowing down, moving from distraction to quiet, thoughtful study was really anxiety-inducing and fear-inducing for me, because my brain was just really busy and overwhelmed with anxiety and dread. I'd ask for advice on how to manage them better so that I could do my homework, but she'd just get angry and say, "You just have to do it." Story 12. Some of the most common ones have been visual and or hallucinations and, thoughts of hurting yourself. I usually hear, "I don't want to be put into the hospital," or "I don't want you to think I'm crazy." Also, basically anything sexual. I'm not going to judge you for you being into BDSM, fetishes, etc. Honestly, I've probably heard it before, and I'm not here to judge you. Same goes with any non-consensual experiences, especially if we're working through trauma. Story 12. I do a lot of trauma work. Many people who have experienced sexual assault feel ashamed and confused because their bodies responded. Having an lubrication or erection or even something else does not mean you wanted the sexual contact. It's still assault. Clients often hold a lot of shame and confusion about this. They wonder if it means they wanted it or if there was something wrong with them. It's a tough thing to work through because of this. Well, assault is assault. Sometimes human bodies respond to sexual touch even when we don't want that touch. Story number 13. OCD gets misunderstood a lot. It's not just having a clean house or liking things to be organized. Common intrusive thoughts can include violent thoughts of harming children and other loved ones. Intrusive thoughts of even assaulting a child, fear of being a serial killer, etc. My clients can feel a lot of shame when discussing the thoughts or worry, and they think that I'm going to hospitalize them. Story 14. I work with a lot of anxiety and trauma clients whenever I ask if they would describe their experience as being anxious, about being anxious. I get a lot of, "Oh my gosh, yes." Anxiety has such a physical impact on the body. Heart pounding, trouble breathing, feeling faint, cold, tunnel vision, that we become aware of our body's reaction before we even notice the anxious thoughts triggering the action. Then we panic about why our bodies are flipping out when we're not even aware of feeling threatened. And the anxiety compounds on itself. Anxiety is like an alarm system in our bodies to signal the presence of real or perceived danger. What would you do if your alarm was going off at your house? Check to see if there's a real threat. Scan your environment situation to ground yourself into the present. Turn off the alarm. Breathing exercises help, along with mindful techniques like body scans. And then investigate what tripped the alarm in the first place. Process thoughts around the situation that read like danger to you. It's also important to note that danger doesn't need to be a gun getting pulled on you. Panicking during a presentation that could impact your job and threaten the way you pay your bills and afford your life can feel pretty dangerous if you think about it. Story 15. CPS was called once by my school counselor after she tried to kill me. I wasn't allowed to go to the authorities about anything since both her and my father were selling opiates at the time. You heard that right. When my parents found out that CPS was coming, I was grounded and told my parents we're going to prison, and us kids were going to be in foster care. My family was going to be broken up, and I was told it was my fault for talking to someone about it, even though I didn't know about or understand what a mandated reporter even was. By the time CPS came, I was groomed to say that everything was fine in the home. That my mother's insane outburst was just a Hulk-like anger was, quote, a reaction to a tetanus shot. That is, I felt safe and protected in my environment, and there was absolutely no cause for concern. I even had to learn a new song on the piano just for the CPS worker. The whole visit was literally a performance. I'm still not sure what caused my mom to flip out that day, but I'm assuming it was some kind of bad drug reaction that both of them took since Dad was acting weird too. My mom's a narcissist and a con artist. I have so many stories of her being a ducked-up parent. I'm still not over it all, despite years of therapy. Story 16. 5 years into caring for my 100% disabled father, I can't agree more to these threads. I have also been dubious about therapy and all, but I now know I need it. I'm burnt, mentally exhausted, desperate to have some time for myself, finding time to socialize and maybe even a good relationship. It looks so hard, and the only thing that makes me carry on is that I love him, and he doesn't deserve to end his days in some elder's residence or something equivalent. He was there to raise me and support me for every stupid thing I wanted as a child, and now it's my time to give back. But dang, sometimes when I have to start the day, it feels like I'd throw myself in a lake and just say, "Duck off." everybody. Story 17. As someone who lives with schizophrenia, adolescent and adult, when I first started noticing that not everyone heard voices of varying natures at regular intervals, I was terrified something was wrong, and that, quote, they were going to lock me up and throw away the key. Had I been open to my therapist and honest about what I was experiencing, then I would have been diagnosed a lot sooner, and I would have been able to start my strict treatment plan sooner. My treatment plan consists of multiple medications, long-term weekly psychotherapy, and cognitive behavioral therapy by means of workbooks, on top of positive reinforcement, positive thinking techniques, and breathing exercises. I really wish that I would have been more communicative earlier about my hallucinations. But if you're experiencing anything that doesn't feel right, then I implore you, reach out to a trusted medical professional. You can live a productive, healthy, happy life no matter what your diagnosis is. Story 18. Hello, therapist here. I have several. Speaking to their departed loved ones. Thankfully, theories now support this and don't consider it to be a sign they're not, quote, moving on with their lives. I encourage my clients to explore the continuation of their relationships with the deceased. Number 2. Small ways they've made progress in the week. I know this isn't technically weird, but my clients sometimes don't want to tell me this. Either, I guess, because they fear I'd turn around and say they don't need therapy anymore, or because I might find the progress unnoteworthy, both of which are totally untrue. Number 3. That they're having bizarre intrusive thoughts of hurting themselves or other sexual fantasies and so on. As a therapist, I'm trained to appreciate the whole world that lies between thoughts and action, and it all really proves is that we have an imagination. It's highly unlikely I'll need to break confidentiality and won't call the police immediately.